Okay, hello everyone. Welcome to the October Data and Performance Management meeting. Welcome. If you haven't already, please enter your agency name into the chat box so we know who is participating. Also, if you are able, please unmute yourself as you have feedback or questions. We try to make this meeting interactive so that we can get feedback from you and you can hear from each other as well. So don't be shy. If you can't unmute yourself, you can always put your question or comment in the chat. And then I see a comment, there was a problem with the meeting link. Yes, we have found that out too. So I think Elizabeth is working on that. But we're gonna go ahead and get started. Okay, so our agenda today, we are going to be talking about the coordinated entry universal data elements data quality threshold. We are also going to review referral success rates between OC as well as nationally for coordinated entry. And then we will finish up looking at the permanent supportive housing and other permanent housing project performance reports. Okay, so for a little bit of background on the data quality thresholds, we do have thresholds for all other project types for data quality. We did not have one for coordinated entry. Because coordinated entry was newly added to HMIS. Was it this year? I don't even know. Time has no meaning to me. But recently, coordinated entry was added to HMIS, and we wanted to give those projects a little bit of time to review and clean up their data before we establish the threshold. But now we feel like it's time to implement one. And so we have talked a little bit with the CES leads about this, and we all kind of agreed that 95% or more for the universal data elements data quality threshold would be a good place to start. And so what you're seeing on the screen here is the average data quality score for both the individual and family coordinated entry systems since the beginning of 2021. And the red line is the 95% proposed threshold. So you can see that the family coordinated entry system, which is orange, is meeting the threshold for 4 out of the 6 quarters that we looked at this, and they're just 1 percentage point under for 2 of them. And then the individual coordinated entry system is meeting the threshold for all but 1. And so I just wanted to share what the data quality thresholds look like for the other project types as well. So for most project types, the universal data elements threshold is actually 98%. While for services only and street outreach projects, the threshold is 95%. And since coordinated entry functions kind of similarly to street outreach, we thought this would be a good threshold to start at. The reason that the coordinated entry projects don't have a threshold for the program specific data elements at entry or at exit is because HUD does not require any of those program specific data elements for coordinated entry. They only require the universal data elements. So that's why there's only 1 threshold for that project type. So I will take a pause, and I do see a few coordinated entry people on the call. I don't know if anyone has comments or questions that they want to share on this threshold. right. I'm not seeing any comments coming in on the chat, and I'm not seeing anyone unmuting. So we will be publishing this threshold on our website with the other data quality thresholds. And just a reminder, the data quality thresholds are, with all of our thresholds, a goal that the project should be moving towards. For coordinated entry, we're fairly close in most cases, or meeting the threshold, so it should be fine. But the coordinated entry isn't being, I guess, judged by this in terms of like scoring for the NOFO or anything like that. So right now it's more of a goal to work towards for the group, and just to have a baseline to see our progress over time. All right. So the next topic that we wanted to cover today was looking at coordinated entry data and system performance. So a couple months ago, HUD released the coordinated entry data and system performance document that I linked on the slides here. And the document includes an overview of CES, how different COCs across the country have set up HMIS. Sorry, and strategies to improve performance, as well as some data analysis. Their analysis includes COCs that have submitted APRs from October 2021 through January 2022. And so I just wanted to take a little bit of time to review some of that data and compare it to our Orange County data, and see how we're performing compared to COCs across the country. And so the link is here, like I did mention. I'll put it in the meeting minutes as well. So if anybody wants to read the full thing, you will be able to. So the first data point that we're looking at is CES referrals to rapid rehousing projects. So on all the charts I'm going to show you, Orange County will be the first bar, and then COCs across the US will be the bottom bar. And you'll also be able to see the number of referrals that are included in both of these populations. So for rapid rehousing referrals, the percentage of referrals that were successful is fairly close between Orange County and the US. Orange County is slightly higher. We do have more unsuccessful referrals that are due to the client than the US. And we have about the same percentage of unsuccessful referrals because of the provider. Across the country, there are also a significant portion where no outcome was recorded. And we did not have that in Orange County, which is great because you always want to have the most complete data as possible. And then for the other project types, there's a little more gap between the successful referrals. So for permanent supportive housing referrals, we're doing quite a bit better than COCs across the country. 47% of our referrals are successful compared to 35% for the other COCs. We do still have more unsuccessful referrals due to the client, and similar unsuccessful referrals for the provider. So this is great. We're doing well on acceptance for permanent supportive housing projects. And then also for referrals to other permanent housing projects, again, we're doing significantly better than the other COCs in the country. 52% of referrals are successful compared to 37%. You'll notice the referrals included in these measures is a lot smaller, especially across the US. And I think it's because other permanent housing projects are not HUD funded, and rely much more on local private funding. So I think that's why across the country this number is much lower. For this project type, we also have less unsuccessful referrals due to the client than across the US, and also less unsuccessful referrals due to the provider. And we did have some or referrals without outcomes. So that's something that hopefully we'll be able to improve on in the future.
Is it okay if I ask, what does it mean to have no outcome recorded? Because they're still pending, or?
It could be still pending. I'm also wondering if it might include like removed from the queue or something like that that isn't tracked under unsuccessful somehow. This is from the APR, so I'd have to read through the programming specifications more. Any other comments or questions on the CES referrals data? I wanted to share with the group, number one, to just kind of share what HUD is doing and how they're looking at this data, and also just to let everyone know that we are doing pretty well on the rate of accepted referrals. So just wanted to tell everyone great job and keep up the good work. All right, I'm not seeing any comments or questions coming in. So I'm going to pull up the permanent supportive housing project performance reports. These reports were published earlier today. If you haven't had a chance to look at them yet, they are available. As usual, we have project scores, so you'll be able to see a list of all the permanent supportive housing and other permanent housing projects, as well as the performance score for each measure and the threshold for each measure. But for our talk today, I want to focus more on how the project type is doing as a whole. So you can see over the last 4 reporting periods, we've stayed pretty consistent in terms of entries from homelessness. There's only a small percentage of clients that are not entering from homeless situations. Goal 4 is looking at the number of days it's taking to place households in units. That has increased this current reporting period. I wanted to stop for a minute and see if there were any permanent housing providers that have experienced an increase in the amount of time it's taking clients to be placed in units, and if they've experienced it, and how that's happening or why that's happening. I'm just looking to see if there's any. I see Friendship Shelter. I don't know if anyone there has experienced this. Or Illumination Foundation, if your team has experienced that, or OCHA.
This is Manny with OCHA. We have experienced it just because of the market itself. It's just taking a lot longer for the clients to actually find units. We have been experiencing a lot of extensions and vouchers in order for the clients to actually find a suitable unit.
Okay, thanks for sharing. All right, and then looking at goal 5, this is the percentage of beds and units in the project that are utilized during the reporting period. We are right around 86% for this quarter, and it's increased very slightly since the last time we ran these reports. We can get into the details a little bit more when we get to the goal 5 page. For goal 6 and 7, we're looking at adults that increase their income. So goal 6 is adults that remain in the project and increase their income. And goal 7 is adults that exited the project and increase their income. For goal 6, we're staying pretty consistent over time. And goal 7, we've had a little bit of a decrease. And we can talk about that a little bit more when we get to those screens as well. Goal 9 is clients that are stabilizing in permanent housing. So they're being placed in a unit and they're staying there, or they're exiting to a permanent housing situation. This is usually a very easy measure for our projects to meet because this is kind of the overall goal of permanent supportive housing and other permanent housing, and clients are staying in units. They don't have to exit. So that's why they're so successful. Goal 10 is clients that exit the projects to permanent housing and then later return back to homelessness. We're staying fairly consistent right around 7%, and which is meeting our threshold. That's great. And then our newer coordinated entry measures. So goal 11 is looking at the percentage of new enrollments in the project that were referred from the coordinated entry system. We've had a big increase in this percentage, which is great. A lot of this is due to data cleanup. It's not necessarily that more clients are being referred from the coordinated entry system now, it's just the agencies have been going back and correcting their data to make sure that if they have an enrollment, it is linked to the coordinated entry system. So that's great. Keep up with that. Goal 12 is of the referrals that were denied, what percentage of those were denied by the housing provider? And we're staying consistent at 45%, which is just over our threshold. So we're very close on that. Goal 13 is looking at the number of days it's taking to accept a client into the housing project after they've been matched. We have an increase in that as well, which is the opposite way. We're trying to actually go down and decrease the amount of time it's taking to accept clients. I wanted to take another quick pause and see if any of the agencies have experienced this, that over the past few months, it's taking longer to accept clients, maybe because you're reviewing eligibility or some other part of the process is taking longer that is increasing this time. Any permanent supportive housing or other permanent housing providers experiencing that? Let's see, I see American Family Housing came on. Illumination. Nobody. Hi, Brian. Oh, bye, Brian.
Oh, sorry. I don't think we have ran into that issue so far. So far we have been doing fine on that.
Okay, thank you. All right. The last goal before I get into some more specifics is the rate that households are being successfully matched to a housing provider. So of the matches, how many of those resulted in an enrollment? So we would like our threshold to be 50% or higher. We're just a bit under that right now. So we're hoping to increase that moving forward. So I'm going to get into each of the specific measures a little bit. All right. Goal 1 is looking at clients entering from literal homeless situations. And right now, about 90% of clients are entering from homeless situations, and the donut on the right here is showing of those clients that are not entering from homeless situations, where are they entering from? And there's a good chunk where we are missing that information. This could be a way for your agency to improve your score for this measure. Since these are permanent supportive housing clients, hopefully you're able to build a relationship with these clients and collect the data that you need for your reporting. And the client's entry situation is part of that. So if you can go back and collect that data as much as possible, that could improve your performance for this measure. And if you do an enrollment with a client and they don't provide that information, and then maybe a month or two later your relationship is improved, you can go back and collect that data from the client. Just make sure that you're collecting where they were prior to entering your program, not where they are at that time. All right. Goal 4 is, again, the length of time it's taking to place households in units. The good news is over half of the enrollments that are included in this measure are meeting the thresholds of 30 days or less. So that's great. But as a project type, the average amount of time it's taking to be placed in a unit is about 59 days. And it's fairly consistent across the other subpopulations. The next measure is looking at the percentage of occupied beds and units in the projects. And you can see that households with children is lower than households without children. I think that is due to the way that some projects have both household types that they have beds for, and these are voucher projects, and whether the voucher is assigned to a family or an individual changes over time. So I think that is contributing to this low percentage, because when we're pulling this data, we're looking at the bed inventory that's on the HIC or the most recent inventory provided by the agency. And so the agency may say, I have 10 units for households with children, but in reality, it's possible for that voucher to also go to a household without children. So that I think that's what's happening, is some of the units that on the HIC were designated for households with children are in use by households without children. Goal 6 is adults that increase their income while remaining enrolled in the project. The project type score is 57% of adults are increasing their income. That's fairly consistent across the other subpopulations. There's another 17% of clients that are maintaining their income, so that's good news. The other thing I wanted to point out, which is really good news, is that there were no clients with missing income, no adults at least. So that means that we are collecting the data. It could be for some of the clients that have maintained or no income, it's possible that the user hasn't updated their annual income. So I recommend reviewing your data for that to make sure that when you do an annual assessment for your client, you are updating their income to make sure you're capturing even those really small increases. Because even if their amount goes up by like a cent, it's still considered an increase by HUD. So if there's a cost of living increase for the client, if they have another small side job or something that they picked up, make sure you're tracking all of that so that you're getting those positive results. So goal 7, very similar. It's just looking at those that exited during the reporting period. The project type score is 37%, which is fairly consistent. Households with children are doing a little bit better on that measure. Again, there were no clients with missing income, which is great. Just make sure that you are tracking all those small changes in income, especially when you exit the client, so that you're getting credit for the work that you're doing. Goal 9 is clients that stabilize in permanent housing, which is, again, the easy measure for this project type to meet. In the bar chart here, you can see the clients that are not exiting to permanent housing situations and not stabilizing in permanent housing and where they're going. The majority are exiting to homelessness, and followed by clients with missing destinations. So in some cases, the missing data is because maybe there's been a disagreement with the client and they left without saying anything. But so again, if as much as possible, if you can collect that data, that could be helpful. It may improve your performance for this measure as well. Even if they're going to stay with their family or stay with their friends permanently, that's a positive exit. So you want to make sure you're capturing that. Goal 10 is looking at clients that exited from 2 permanent housing situations and later returned to the homeless system. Again, 7% is the score for the project type. It's pretty consistent across the different subpopulations. When clients are returning to the homeless system, they are mostly returning to street outreach or emergency shelter projects, which makes sense because they're likely going through the coordinated entry system, and those are really the ways to access coordinated entry. For those clients that are returning to rapid rehousing or permanent supportive housing projects, if you have any of these where when you're getting the report, it says they're returning to permanent supportive housing or rapid rehousing, look really closely at those and make sure that the start and end dates in your project and the start and end dates in the following project make sense, because there's not a lot of rapid rehousing or permanent supportive housing projects that aren't taking referrals from coordinated entry unless the client is switching between projects. So like they're in one permanent supportive housing project, but this other permanent supportive housing project is a better fit. That would be like a changing projects. And in that case, the end date in your project and the start date for the new project should be like a day apart. So like or maybe even the same day, if you exited one project and started another project without a housing gap, those dates might be in the same day. And in that case, they wouldn't be counted as a return to homelessness. So for these rapid rehousing and permanent supportive housing clients, the gap between their exit in your project and enrolling in the next project is more than 2 weeks, which shouldn't be happening if they are transferring between projects. So just look at those dates really closely. The second bar chart is looking at how long it's taking these clients to return to the homeless system after they've been exited. So 20 clients are returning within 6 months, which is the majority. And there are 10 enrollments from PSH and Rapid Rehousing that returned. So it's possible those 10 are within the 6 months. That's kind of what you would need to look at. But once clients make it past the 1 year mark, they're much less likely to return to homelessness. So that's kind of the goal, is to get the clients past that first year. Okay, so now getting into the measures related to coordinated entry. This is the measure where we saw the most improvement since the last time we did these reports. This is the percentage of enrollments entering into the permanent housing project that were referred from coordinated entry. We have a breakdown of looking at COC funded projects versus those that are not COC funded, and it's actually really close for both, which is great. COC funded projects have a requirement to participate in coordinated entry. Non-COC funded projects do not, but may choose to. So it's great to see that percentage so high. If you have a PSH project and you know your project is participating in coordinated entry and your referrals is less than 100%, it's likely that you have enrollments in your project that haven't been linked with a coordinated entry referral. And so if that's the case, you can run the project performance details reports to see who those clients are. There's a goal 11 spreadsheet. You'll be able to see who those clients are that don't have a referral. And you can put in a ticket with the help desk and we can help you get those linked, so you're getting credit for that work as well. Goal 12. So this again is looking at, of the denied referrals, what percentage are denied by the housing provider. This may be the measure with the most cleanup that's needed right now, at least obvious cleanup that's needed. So we've talked about it at a couple meetings. When you deny a referral from coordinated entry, one of the things you have to select is whether the client or the referral is denied because of the client or because of the provider. So it's really critical to get that right, so that denials by the client are not impacting your score here. So for example, if a client was deceased or the client denied the opportunity or the voucher expired, the reason for denial should really be the client for all of those. So those shouldn't be showing up on this donut at all. So that would be data cleanup that's needed by the providers. I also have some more examples. Well, let me go back really quick. You'll also see on the donut, there's a large percentage that selected other for the reason for denial. And I did some analysis on the text box that's associated with that. So if a user selected other for their reason for denial, they have to type in details. And so I kind of consolidated what was there. The majority of the responses were that there was non-compliance with requests for items or information, followed by voucher expired, no client with contact, deceased, or client declined. All of these in yellow should actually be categorized as a denial by the client. And all of these should fall under one of the existing reasons for denial. They should not be selected as other. I did link to an article that we have that goes into denying a referral and when you should select a client denial versus a provider denial. And it also goes into some of these common responses that we see when someone selects other and what you should actually be selecting from the dropdown. So these are all items that should be you should be selecting another reason for denial. You should not be selecting other. There was only about 15 that, based on the information in the note, I couldn't determine if it was what the reason for denial was. All the rest of them really should have been under another category. So as much as possible, review both who denied the referral, if it was the client or the provider, and the reason for the denial to make sure that that information is being captured accurately. So after I kind of did that analysis and cleanup based on the data that we had available, this is actually a better representation of what the reasons for denial would have been during the reporting period that we're looking at. So about 75% of the denials were by the provider were due to an incorrect match, followed by inappropriate referral. So what that means is the housing opportunity was no longer available, or there was a lack of eligibility or something like that, that should have been considered before the match was made. And then landlord decline followed that. And then there was the 15 other that I couldn't determine the reason from. So all of that to say, as much as you can, pull that project performance details report that I mentioned and look at goal 12 and review that knowledge base article that I linked, and I'll put in the minutes as well to try and clean up that data as much as possible. All right, goal 13. This is the amount of time it's taking to accept matches into your project after the days between the match date and the acceptance into your project. So how long that process is taking. During this project process, the agency is usually reviewing eligibility requirements, so that can impact the time frame on this, but that's what this goal is looking at. So the project type score is about 100 days. We're trying to get that under 45 or 45 or less. And veterans are a little bit lower, but it's pretty consistent over the subpopulations. Only about 21% of the referrals are actually within our goal right now. So that's an area of improvement for the future. And then the last goal is the percentage of matches that resulted in a successful referral. Our goal is at least 50%, and we're currently at 40. Veterans are a little bit lower, and families are a little bit higher. I don't know if there's anybody that's working with veterans on the call that can speak to that. Just why the acceptances for veterans are lower. I'll just let everyone think for a minute on that one. The only thing I can think of is it may come down to whether or not their discharge was honorable. Because I know that can disqualify veterans from some opportunities, but other than that, I can't think of a reason. And then in our little bar chart here, we are comparing successful referrals for COC funded projects versus non-COC funded. There's a bit more of a gap here. So COC funded projects have a higher acceptance rate than non-COC funded projects. This might be because HUD has more standardization around eligibility requirements and documents needed. And so, and like CES leads may be more familiar with that and know what clients will and won't be accepted, and therefore they're better at matching, while non-COC funded projects can have their own eligibility requirements, which can make it a little more difficult, possibly. I don't know if Catherine or Aubrey, if you have any experience with that, and have noticed the difference between COC funded and non-COC funded projects. Catherine might have left. Go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I was going to wait for her, but I think, do you have examples of, do you happen to know which ones are not COC funded? I feel like I usually don't have that information on hand, so I'm not sure how many projects fall into that category.
So COC funded, OCHA has a lot of COC funded projects. Friendship Shelter has one, American Family Housing has two, Mercy House has some, but non-COC funded would be any other permanent housing projects that don't have a disability requirement would not be COC funded. Any projects that don't have a services component that's permanent housing would not be COC funded.
Would that be like the vouchers? Because I feel like the EHV stick out. Like,
Yeah,
I think
EHV
at a
is
lot
not
of-
COC funded.
Okay, yeah, that might be a good portion of them then, since I feel like especially lately, it's been about a little over a year since we started matching those, and I feel like we have gotten a lot of denials recently because vouchers are expiring, so people aren't able to find places in time that sort of meet the criteria, and so they get returned. I think that could be part of it.
Okay, thanks, Aubrey. Yes, vouchers expiring would explain some of this number. Vouchers expiring would be an unsuccessful match, so that could be contributing to that. Yeah. So that was all I have on the project performance reports. Does anybody have any comments or questions about any of the reports we went over? Any questions about how to improve your data, or even any of the other two topics we've talked about today?
I think I was just going to ask if that's okay for a clarification when you're talking about the types of denials and the data cleanup. Is it possible to change those after the denial's been processed, or is it kind of like we're just maybe trying to be more careful going forward?
I believe you can change them. I believe you can edit. If you have to prioritize your workload, I would say like focus on the clients that are during the current reporting period or the upcoming reporting period. So it will be clients like starting, I think it was September maybe. So try to prioritize those first, and definitely work on it moving forward. But if you can go back and correct data, that's helpful also.
Thank you. And I think that if nobody else has anything, I guess I don't want to skip too far back, but it was just on my mind a little bit that for the data quality thresholds, I know for our individual program, at least, one of the biggest issues, and it looked like it was similar in the family system, is the data not collected for exit destinations. I feel like that's just like the most common. So I know we're meeting the threshold. I think that's good, but in case we ever want to get to like 98%, I was wondering if you have any thoughts on that or advice on that? Like, I just feel like a lot of people, they leave the shelter or the street outreach program and then they sort of don't know where they're going. Do you feel, I also feel like Rebecca mentioned once that maybe if we don't know where they are, they should even be kept enrolled, but I feel like that's risky because sometimes people just aren't in contact for months. But just in general, like how could we improve that?
So we do have a threshold for clients on the coordinated entry community queue, and I believe it's 60 days. And if a client is removed from the community queue for inactivity, they also should be exited from the coordinated entry project. And in that case, unfortunately, if you don't have any information on where they went, you'd have to do like data not collected. You could potentially look at the client's history or work with other providers that are working with the client to try and collect that information. And the destination field should be where they're supposed to be going. So if they exit somewhere and then a few days later they, then exit to homelessness, you should be tracking where they went originally. So if they exit to their friend's house and then a week later they're homeless again, you should be tracking that they exit to their friend's house. It is difficult for coordinated entry to sometimes capture that exit destination if the client isn't successful. That's typical for street outreach projects as well. I would also say sometimes it can be harmful to keep them open too long because so like street outreach projects have run into this, that they work with the client and they place them in a shelter, and then sometimes they keep their enrollment open, and then the client exits to homelessness later. So if they, and then at that point they exit the client. So if they were to exit the client when they were placed in the emergency shelter, they would have had a positive exit, but by waiting, they end up with a negative exit. So it's kind of like take your wins where you can get them. But yes, we do recognize that it's really tough for coordinated entry projects to collect that data. It's probably the hardest data element.
Yeah, thank you. I think that's what we're seeing. Maybe I'll talk to the team and see, maybe we can have people looking back into history a little bit further, just to see if we have any idea at any point where they went.
Yeah, and if the coordinated entry referral is successful, that's really the best situation and the easiest to track, because if they're entering a project, you just enter their destination based on the project type that they're matched to. And in the same knowledge base article that I mentioned about the community queue for housing providers, we list if the client is exiting to this type of project, this is what you should put for destination. So you can check that out as well.
Okay, thanks.
All right. I don't have anything else unless there's any other comments or questions. I will stay on for a few minutes in case anyone's typing anything or wants to ask a question. As usual, the meeting minutes and recording and slides will be sent out to the group. Hopefully tomorrow that'll happen. And then the next meeting is scheduled for November, hold on, 10th, and we will work on the link issue for next time. So if you haven't already, please enter your agency name into the chat box so we know who's participating. Apologies for those that had issues getting into the meeting at the beginning. But thank you all for attending.